Finance and Audit Committee. So Kelly, do we have apologies?
We don't know.
Okay, fine, thank you. Any declarations of interest, please? No? Okay, I don't have any announcements other than to welcome everyone here. So if we go straight into agenda item number 4, the community safety funding, and that's Brian Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cox. They say never starts with an apology, but I'm going to start with an apology. So straight off the top where it says on page 3, the report is for decision. It's for information now. So there is not going to be a 20k ask from myself. I've done some research and well, 4 weeks in now. So since the report's been submitted, so I've done a bit of digging around downstairs, and all this can be delivered. I'll circle back to that in a second. Within the current budgets that we've got downstairs.
Okay.
So just want to point that out straight away. So the recommendations slightly changed then since this was submitted. So I'm not looking for a 20k funding because we've got that. But it's essentially for the commissioners to support the continuation of the domestic violence and cylinder retrieval scheme, which I'll go into in a second, as supplied. And what I'll do then, and I'll come into it in the report, I'm going to do a further review into work safety, and I anticipate to sort that into a business as usual with operational communities.
Okay.
With the relevant safe systems to work in place. So there will be no loss of service to any of our communities as we transition from as is currently to as it will be in the future. I pause. I couldn't even understand my own handwriting. I was looking down thinking, why did I write that?
I will then pick up on this letter we've had from the minister. So that must be relating to this, surely, Brian. Yes?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So if we go to page 4 then, and get into just a little bit of detail for context. So I guess the context is important. So, 1.2, I'm not going to go through each section, but if we go down to 1.4 then.
Yeah.
So just as an overview, the Welsh Fire and Rescue Services faced a reduction of 457k from the proposed 848k.
Can I just, I'm sorry to cut across you.
No,
This is a real semantic issue for me as an English teacher. If I see the word programme, that's not the correct way of spelling it. It's NE for any programme of work.
Sure.
That's the American version, and it's or to do with IT. Okay, so can we just, because there are a couple of typos and semantics that I will note, but with public documents we need to be entirely accurate.
That's a fair point, and it's probably set up as a US word checker on.
Yes, indeed. So can we just make sure that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'll be referring to the word mannequin later on as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go on to are you happy to move on to 1.5 then?
Yes.
Wilcox. So what this for this service specifically relates to or translates to is 167k for Southwest Fire and Rescue Service.
Yeah.
And that directly impacts on the arson reduction grant, 107k.
Mm-hmm.
Innovations grants and then 1.6 points out. The innovations grant, the 60k is an all Wales secondment.
Yes.
So that's across Wales, that's 60k. Just so happened that the occupational therapist was located in this building.
Yes.
So hence why 60k is.
So we're running it for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. And what we've done there is those sort of work streams that the occupational therapist has picked up and has now left, and we've absorbed them into business as usual, really. So there's no reduction in services we provide.
Mm-hmm.
The arson reduction grant funds, that for a seconded police officer 1.7.
Mm-hmm.
And domestic violence service and cylinder retrieval facility on a 365 24/7 basis.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, that was to encompass the funding for the police officer, the vehicle costs, honorarium payments, and call-out expenses for the community safety staff that handle those referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So because we knew this was coming, we've sort of altered the ways we work downstairs now, and because we got a duty under the serious violence duty now, that's hitherto what we've had is problems with the sharing of information, and that's what our police officer allowed.
Of course.
Niche systems,
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
Attacks on crews. So we could take no action straight away there. But because of this serious violence duty now, we're able to pull that information, which can influence how we do business, local risk assessments, and target hardening we can do, for instance.
Good.
So just for backgrounds, the issue, the domestic violence service, that's a crucial role in mitigating arson-related risks for domestic violence victims. So essentially, upon notification of arson threats or attacks, the fire crime units, which works for me, a practitioner will provide target hardening measures for the premises. And that usually includes the installing of a letterbox guard and prevents lit materials being pushed through.
Mhm.
And the cylinder retrieval scheme is about firefighter and public safety. And what happens then, you get carelessly discarded cylinders that can cause significant injuries to both staff and the public. So it's important when we're notified about them, we've got a way of collecting them. And that essentially came about, the funding for that on 23rd of May 2004, when firefighter Richard Jenkins lost his life in the fire in Ely. And that was fighting the fire in a hut scout, and it was a disused scout building. There was a cylinder in the ceiling, and it exploded while it was fighting the fire in the building. So that traces its roots back to then. So any cylinders now, we look to recover them. So you can imagine then we don't want to see a cessation of any of these services. And then just on average, we're carrying out, this service carries out 817 domestic violence referrals.
Yes.
And 60 discarded cylinders are usually removed per annum from our communities. And there's some details there about the costs.
Yeah.
So the proposal then was, I was going to come to you today with a 20k ask to continue for 6 months, but essentially I found the funding within the existing budget. So the proposal really today is that we absorb the current work streams into our business as usual.
Yeah.
The 6 months continuation then will allow myself and the team downstairs to do a review, as detailed 214 there. This review will aim to identify an efficient approach to integrate the domestic violence and cylinder retrieval activities within the existing budgets of the Community Safety Department. And essentially where I see it going in 6 months is we've got lots of stations, we've got officers, so we can provide that service through that means, but we will have the expert practitioner follow up the first business day, the first available opportunity. So there will be zero reduction in what our communities have come to expect from us to this point. And then the implications really there, some of the work we do, if not all the work we do in community safety, has a direct impact on the well-being of future generations, the socio-economic duty, and there's a safeguarding issue as well. And that safeguarding is twofold. It's the safety of our firefighters and the safety of our communities, and particularly those exposed to domestic violence. As I move down then to resource assets delivery, will be absorbed within existing budgets. The conclusion then, so initially the loss of Welsh Government grants presents a significant challenge in integrating key activities within our community safety structure. We've effectively mitigated those challenges recently. So this review will allow, that I'm going to conduct, will allow some time and some space to come up with a more sustainable, cost neutral process for carrying out these domestic violence checks out of ours and cylinder retrieval schemes out of ours. So essentially then the recommendation today is the Commissioner's note the changes that have been made to date, and note that there will be further changes in the future, so that the domestic violence and cylinder retrieval scheme will be absorbed within business as usual activities. I'm happy to take questions now.
Well, thank you, Brian, for that detailed report and update. A couple of things I'd like to note. Firstly, I'd like to note that we thank the Minister for, in our reply to her letter, for the grant funding for this important work. The 6 months review gives us a breathing space to reevaluate, reassign, recheck. We do not have to find that 20k from our reserves, so we thank you for that. My question was going to be, what milestones do we have for the review? So I wanted us to have a review in 3 months' time,
sure,
and not just wait for 6 months. But I think that still stands. So let's have a look at all this halfway through the process at 3 months, and then we can see where we're going, and we can see what other directions we need to take. Okay. Any other comments? Yeah.
So I just want to add to what Brian said, that the remainder of the grant that does remain clearly, we've received notification, I know you have as well today, that the business cases that were required to direct what that remainder was going to be spent on, they've been submitted and accepted by Welsh Government.
Excellent.
So the remainder of the grant is confirmed, and
Yeah.
it's for two elements. One is in relation to our work around children and young people, and the second element is in relation to the capital support towards purchasing of intervention equipment, smoke detectors and other intervention equipment.
Yeah, good. Kirsty.
Yes, so forgive me, for sitting in today additionally, but I think it's just really important to learn as much as I can. And I just want to thank Brian. You know, it's so difficult, isn't it, when all organisations, and I think of other organisations I'm involved in, we get so reliant, don't we, on ring-fenced government funding. And if that government funding comes to an end, it's really difficult to mainstream that work. So I just want to say thank you to Brian for finding a way of mainstreaming this work into business as usual. I think that's, you know, so I just wanted to commend Brian for doing that work and finding a way forward.
And we may have to do more of that in future.
Exactly. So I just want to say, you know, well, thank you so much for finding a way of doing that, because in some ways it's just so easy to say, well, the grants come to an end, that's the end of that. But to mainstream it into business as usual is really good. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
No.
Appreciate
Great.
Very good.
Okay, in that case, then we do what we're supposed to do. We note it. We move on, please, to agenda item 5. No, revenue monitoring report. Yeah, that's Gavin.
It's Lisa now, because Lisa's kindly stepped up to the plate as acting treasurer in the absence of Chris Barton. So Lisa's going to cover the revenue monitoring capital monitoring.
Okay, so I just take Geraint Thomas's name out of all the lists that I've got in front of me. Okay, and I'll move to Lisa, and I'll ask Lisa to do it. And if she says to me at any point, no, it's Geraint, we'll move back to Geraint.
We'll have a game of tennis.
Okay, so Lisa, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. This report, I'm not going to go through it in detail because I trust you've already read it. So
I've got notes and questions.
lovely. So just as an overview, the monitoring report provides details of the annual revenue budget for the year and associated information, and you can see that on the associated appendices. So what happens after the first report for the year is each subsequent reporting date, we provide you information on the changes that have occurred since the previous report, as opposed to rehashing for the whole year.
No, of course. I want to know if we've got any slippage. I want to know, you know, any problems. And, you know, that's the way, you know, as a former leader of an authority, that's exactly the way I'm used to working.
Great. So I think this will just concentrate on the changes since the report the 4th of December. If you've got any backward looking questions, I can come back to you outside of the forum then and provide you the detail on that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
I'll test my memory and I'll try, but I may not get
Not at all, Lisa. I'm sure there's an answer there somewhere, but I wouldn't expect you to go back that far back. But let's
see what we've got
here.
So appendix 1 on page 13 gives you an overview of the budget to date. So the original budget set, a revised budget that includes things like by-a-months are requests from service managers to move budget around. So say they needed less in this area and their priorities moved to this area. That's what constitutes the revised budget. And we've got some grants in there. We've got actuals, which is actual transactions to date, and this report includes those actual transactions up to the 22nd of January. So it's not the end report for this year closing. You will get that in something called an outturn report when we bring the draft accounts to you. So I'm assuming you will.
And well,
What it also does,
they also have always found money that they said they didn't have.
It's amazing,
so I
isn't it?
you to do the same.
Like magic. So there's over and underspend. So that's a variance analysis for you, and it gives that to you in an absolute and in a relative format. And I think the most important thing on that appendix 1 is the overspend position of 32,000. And I think then if we move on to appendix 2, this is probably more useful in terms of tracking through the journey that we've been on throughout the year. So appendix 2 gives you almost appendix 1, but it gives you the position we were in at each reporting date throughout the year. So you will see in the pale green area there that you've got, we were originally reporting on 0.67 million overspend, and we've managed to pull that back through a variety of
Well, you've halved it.
Halved it, yes. So we've got from there 232, and there's some high line points there for you in the summary column that describes how we did that and the reasons for the changes. So if we turn over into the reserve statement, So we end the year with an over or underspend position. What happens then is that has impact then on our reserves. So it's either you're putting money into the reserve with a surplus on your revenue budget, or you're taking money from the reserves for an overspend. We've got an overspend this year, so we'll be taking money from the reserves, and that'll come through from the change management section there. So what this page presents to you is got 11 reserve pots there, if I can call them that, for your purposes.
Yeah.
There's probably only 7 that you have freedoms to use there. I would say the equipment renewals, PFI, capital receipts and joint control leases, you haven't got much freedom on what you use those for. So in terms of our reserves, what we tend to do is we categorise them into usable and non-usable reserves.
Yeah.
So whilst all these fall into your usable reserve category, they are ring fenced for certain things like PF, funding your PFI, funding the equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At the top, from general down to equality, diversity and inclusion, you have more decision-making powers there with them. All right?
Yeah.
Can
I ask, because I do have a question on this, and it's for the change management line and the equality, diversity and inclusion line.
Yes.
So will these be separate lines in future accounting?
So what we, in terms of the reserve structure, yes, that is a separate line in the reserve structure.
Yeah.
I think with Dominic starting with us now, our new Director of Transformation and Change, I would seek to work with him to flesh out what the detailed plans that were falling into those areas would be.
Yeah.
Because there will be impacts for ED&I, there will be impacts for change and transformation, thematic reviews, cultural reviews, fallouts, things like that.
Yeah.
So that is an overview for you.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you wanted to go through in more detail, have a breakdown of what that looks like in terms of translating service plans into financial plans, we can do that for you.
Definitely.
If you want that outside of this meeting, that is useful
Absolutely.
as a more of a scrutiny piece for commissioners.
Yeah.
Lastly, then we've got our Appendix 4, and this gives you an overview of the grants that have come into service during the year. What I'd like to draw your attention to here is that the main areas are home fire safety equipment, youth and hazard. Now what you can see there is there's some significant overspends there. And what we find with our grants is that they never completely fund. So there's some grants we come in, we spend what we fund for, okay? But there's a lot of other grants there that you can see, and I appreciate this is quite small, that you can see that one we've underspent on, and there's some others that we've overspent on. And the reason why we wind this information into our budget is, I want to tell you what the impact on the revenue budget is when those grants don't come in on the money. So if we are overspending our own fire safety equipment for, and it shows there, we've got the right glasses on, 137,000. What that's telling you is we need to find 137 in the revenue budget to fund that. Or you make decisions such as paying back our approach and our works and things like that. But that's a big piece for us in terms of preventative work.
Could I ask again? I'm being pedantic, I know, but could we enlarge this table so it takes up 2 days?
Of course you can.
Because it
is difficult.
It is difficult, and I can just about make it out, but for the flow of the meeting, that would be much more helpful. Thank you.
No, I agree with you there. It is difficult. So that's all I've tried to do there is you'll see those subtotal headings there. They'll give you an idea of the impact on the revenue budget. And also there was a piece of work, I don't know if you recall, Lady Wilcox, from your town meeting report, where SIPA tried to get us to tell the story. And what that did for us, it looked at how our internal reporting and scrutiny fed into our external financial reporting and statement of accounts.
Yes, yeah.
It's like a technical area.
Yes.
So it was looking at what money is flowing through your systems internally. How are you paying for services, and how does that go into statutory reporting? And it was all part of that transparency piece.
Yeah.
I think that was 2016, something like
yes, that does ring a bell actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Chris was still there at the time actually in 2016.
No, he's
I think
been
we
just with us.
2014.
Was he? Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So we had Myrian, the lovely Myrian.
That's right.
Who's still there?
Yes, I know Miriam well.
I don't know if he's quite lovely, so Like the Skinny or somebody needs to be.
Definitely strike that from that.
So we have those appendices there telling you the position. I think in terms of where we are, just to bring it back to hard facts.
Yeah.
Since previous reporting, there's been a £493,000 decrease in the forecast overspend position
Yeah.
on the revenue budget. So we've gone from 1.325 million to 832,000 there. Underneath that, then there'll be a narrative on the overs and unders of
Yes.
that position, what are equating to it.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of detail there.
Yes.
So if you've got any questions on that, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, so I was looking at 2.2.1, the employee costs. So I've got a comment here offsetting the above is in 96 for increase in forecast employee pensions costs.
Yeah.
So a number of retirement and leavers. So that's about extra churn, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
churn, yes. So basically, when we've overachieved on our pension, our retirement profile, and we have got a profile, we've got a workforce planning model. When we overachieve on that, it's got a knock-on effect, not just in salaries, but also in the on costs, which are separated out for these purposes. So it does cost the employer a little bit less. And that's what you see in there.
Yeah, sorry, typo there, 222 premises, you left the S off the end.
Ah,
Okay.
That's what my book is. I'm sorry, I missed that one myself.
Sorry, I'm an English teacher. I can't
Premise is an
help you.
ideal notion.
It's not.
Premises is a building.
Premises costs.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so, and for training costs, are we doing enough training, Chief?
Are we doing enough training? Well, clearly the implementation of the training review and the thematic review in relation to training will unpick where we need to improve and increase most likely the training provision for all sectors.
Yeah, okay, so, because, the question is, if we've got an underspend, then, we need to be looking at spending, so to ensure that, the training, but again, the churn, to use the term again, that we're going through in terms of everything will clearly impact upon this. I expect this budget to go up, surely. We do. And in the next point, I just, it says string solution to support the local government election bill. I just wasn't clear what that meant.
okay, so we had some requirements of the local government election bill for transparency of our governance and our meetings in particular. So what that came in a number of segments. The first segment was actually streaming the meetings. That was one of the requirements. So we've made some changes in the conference room to stream the meetings.
Okay.
They're all available to the public to view online.
Okay.
The second part, which I should have added there, reading that back, is it says, doesn't it, that there's 92,000 that are not going to be spent or has reduced by 54,000.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a saving. What that means is we're going to be pushing the actual purchase of the software into this year.
Okay.
So during 24-25, you're going to have to buy that piece. I don't know if you want to say more about what that piece is.
It was we'd set aside budget for the purchase of modern.gov.
Okay.
So probably where the system is used by local authorities. And
Well, I used to be.
government to some extent. So it's where it's the trying more to a paperless system where all reports, documents, it's a document management system.
I
And
could
directly linked to.
make the spelling mistake correctly myself.
Yeah. It is directly linked then to a hosted system where
Yeah.
all public documents are held.
Yeah.
And part
Yes,
of that is putting
I know
the
exactly
streaming
what you mean.
platform linked to it as well, so you'd have all your authority.
Yeah. Because you can look at other stuff from
Papers.
other councils on it.
Yes.
I've seen it, yeah.
So it's a move to that, to try and get us in line with the legislation.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Obviously, the legislation came in 2021 and applied to primary authorities.
Yeah.
But there's a stipulation within the legislation that Welsh Government can require and rescue authorities and other bodies to comply with that.
Well, that's part.
So it's only a matter of time, I think, before that compliance
That's
comes
part of
in.
the transformation program to make sure that we're in, I mean, and that is the issue, we need to get these
Things in place.
these bread and butter, because if we don't get those in place, then all the other substantive changes that we want to make, we've got to get the foundations there. So that's are you aware of it, Stuart?
I've not come across it, but I'll soon have a look at it.
It's really, yeah, It's very good.
So I think Sarah's been leading on that. She's our deputy monitoring officer. You've met
Yeah.
Sarah. No, she's been leading on it with our head of ICT and comms, Gary, doesn't she?
So when we'd be looking at implementing that?
I suppose it's capacity with IT really in terms of priorities. You know, as I say, the legislation doesn't, we aren't required to comply yet, but it's only a matter of time, I think, before we do. So it's just fitting in with the priorities of the ICT department.
Well, or our priorities, actually, what we require the ICT department to do. Wouldn't you say that, Kirsty, since we are the employers?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have a further look. Can I ask?
Of course, please do.
Me. On Appendix 4, Lisa,
Yes.
there's one there about wax volunteers and Cardiff Vale, UHBs.
And it's for
Last two columns, and I'm just wondering what that's relating. What's that relating to? And then the other thing I was interested, I know the column on circular economy. Does the authority, sorry, the service, not the authority, does the service do any kind of analysis on our impact on foundational economy? We know this is kind of like a ministerial
Yeah,
priority,
yeah.
foundational economy,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering whether we've ever done any work to capture our contribution as a anchor employee, you know, our purchasing power, our contribution to people in place.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about being able to demonstrate to Welsh Government and to a ministerial priority the importance of this organisation in contributing to the foundational economy. It's not a requirement probably to do it, but I'm just wondering if there was capacity, it might be something to think about. We're doing, we're trying, aren't we, to think about how do we tell a good news story about this organisation to its community and to the public.
Using local services.
So, you know, obviously, you know, we provide a very, very important service, but actually, I think it would be really good if we could capture it, demonstrating our contribution to the economy of the area and to our people and our places, rather than just being seen as simply a service organisation. Actually, we're an anchor employer, we're a really important part of the infrastructure of South Wales and making a contribution above and beyond simply what we do as a service.
Yes.
You know, we're a civic organisation that.
Yeah.
And I just think that might be a good news story to start having a
Yeah.
positive narrative about everything that this service provides.
Yeah, it's a discussion we had several weeks ago now, I think, around the requirements under the socio-economic duty.
Yeah.
And a lot of the data that we capture and we hold is there, but we don't report it in a fashion which would show us in that sort of good light against compliance with things like that. So it's there. We just need to put it together in a format.
I don't know, but I just think there's, you know, maybe we're missing an opportunity to be able to demonstrate that impact.
Yeah, there's things like procurement with the social value aspects of it. We're doing all the good work. We're not capturing it properly and shouting it from the rooftops, really.
I mean, it's a great point. I think that so many areas of the organisation that touch in this space. So several, you know, so much around being an employer in rural communities, with our on-call service, you know, all the community work that we do to add value socially in that space. Everything around procurement and using local procurements, all of that touches in this space. And as Gary said, we will have all of the information. It's just pulling that together and being able to demonstrate that. So I will, we can take that away and potentially start to bring that back to either one of the groups or maybe even the board itself as a sort of a regular report.
Yeah, I just think it's worth capturing and you know, demonstrating value above and beyond simply, you know, responding to emergencies and doing the statutory work we do.
I think would it be fair to say that the National Fire Chiefs Council, the Economic and Social Value of UK Fire Services, might sit on the periphery of that. And I've asked my community safety team to quantify all the work that they're doing so that we can provide a social value locally as opposed to just through as net contributors to the UK PLC.
And that's perfect, because on the socio-economic duty, it's easy to capture the procurement stuff because that's hard facts, isn't it? It's much more difficult to do it on people and places, but that contribution is really worthwhile capturing.
I think the NFCC developed a toolkit, didn't they, to help fire and rescue services
Do that.
capture that wider data sets and the qualitative as well as the quantitative.
Sorry,
No, that's a really good point, well made.
last and UHW, not UHW, UHV.
I'll have to ask what that is. It looks like as if we haven't spent anything for it, but I would suggest it's probably, I don't know, use of some latent capacity on the front line. I don't know what that is.
You just got a line.
Yeah, I've sent a question off. It's that level of detail I probably wouldn't see, but I've sent it through to our grants person now.
Thank you. Okay, yeah,
We were 2.24.
yes, so my next point is 2.26 contracted services. So the first point about the 156K in relation to work undertaken by Blake Morgan, independent culture review. So we've got a new line going forward now for all spend relating to transformation.
We have, yes, we've got a coding structure set up.
Yeah.
Which we've already started using.
Yeah.
And I think that we probably need to talk about, we've got the internal transformation stuff occurring, haven't we?
Yeah.
How we capture the commissioners' requests for additional, because you know, you guys will be generating quite a bit of cost between you know, the additional posts and things like that. And I think normally what happens is you would sort of have the financial information to be able to make the decisions about what you want.
Yes.
And then normally
Yeah.
you would expect to be drafting a report to come to a forum such as this to apply scrutiny and get the agreement on it. So the necessary governance, which I guess is weird because you are sitting here doing that piece.
Yes, I mean, yeah, it is a bit of a conundrum, but what I want to ensure to place on record today is that we will be incurring costs.
Yes.
And those costs will be very carefully discussed by the four commissioners, because we do not want to, you know, impinge upon the public purse to a rash extent. But what all people that are associated with this organisation and Welsh Government need to understand, that the seriousness of the changes made here necessitate costs, necessitate change, and the changes that we are bringing in, you know, are not cost neutral. However, you know, we will be circumspect, won't we? You know, we don't intend to spend anything rashly, but there needs to be an awareness, and we made that absolutely clear to Welsh Government, that if we are bringing in extra resources,
Yes.
people, places, things, whatever, then it is for the need to improve the organisation and to deliver the transformation programme. That's why we're doing it. But, you know, I just want it completely out on the table that we are going to have to spend money. It won't be spent in a rash manner. It'll be in a you know, a very sober, judgmental way. And we're all very aware of the demands upon the public purse, but you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, and you can't change this place without spending resource, because we recognise that things need to be brought in here in order to make it better.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've missed anything.
No, I think, you know, I would agree with Lisa. What we need is a plan. We need a plan, and we need a governance structure around that, because I think at the moment it feels a little bit piecemeal. So we just need, you know, we haven't done anybody a service with bank.
No. Yeah.
So, you know, we need to work with colleagues around the table to figure out what is the plan to implement what we've been asked to implement by the minister. What are the resources that need to be allocated to that plan? Do we have those resources? Do we need to deprioritize other areas of spend?
Yeah.
Because we know we haven't got new money to do it.
No.
So we need to do that, and I know that Lisa is, you know, well placed to be able to support us to come up with our plan and to allocate resources accordingly, and look at that across the organisation as I see prioritised. And it's not just in terms of financial resources, is it? we might be deprioritising because there's a human resource element as well. But I think we need to get to, as soon as we can, that very clear plan, resources allocated to it, decisions made, and as Lisa just said, the governance structure and a audit trail associated with that.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah, and you know, picking up on that last point, you know, we're very clear. The audit trail is essential in everything that we do. But but there are, you know, people need to realise there is, you know, there's a huge transformation task that we've been given, and there is a cost involved.
There is. So what we've tried to do, we've started it this week, is try to put a register of the additionals together.
Yeah.
So that'll be things from Dominic's side, things from your side. So what we're trying to do is to quantify that in a ballpark region. So you've got a feel for what you're going to have to draw from reserves, because there is only one place to take that,
Yes.
the extra money from at this moment, and you have them there
Yes.
to use.
Yeah.
But like you said in the last meeting, once you've spent them, they've gone.
Yes.
So it's
That's
getting the most bang for your buck, isn't it, for that spending?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, Stuart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that takeaway from me in this space is that in the first sort of 8 weeks, we have had to respond quickly. We've had to take decisions quickly to put in place a series of actions and resources to respond to the issues at hand.
Yes,
Now,
man-led.
but yes, but
yeah.
now we're at a time of reflection,
Yeah.
and there's an opportunity for us to take away from today's meeting that structure that we just talked about, and
Yes.
that in place going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I can just obviously some picking up on Kirsty Williams' point about prioritisation. Sometimes you've got to put that upfront investment in. So it says pump priming. You know, putting the investment in to pump prime to create the efficiencies further down the line.
Yes.
And that's what the change management reserve was set up for initially, was with a view to pump priming projects that create budget efficiencies in the longer, the medium to longer term.
Yes. Yeah.
It's trying to focus on that, and that's hopefully, as I say, the conversations Lisa will be having with Dominic then around those transformational projects. What efficiencies could be dropping out of those at the other end.
Yes. Yes, and we're all, you know, again, you know, I can't tell you how many millions I had to cut from Newport's budget in 5 years, and how many they've had to cut in the last 4, you know, so I'm very well aware of shrinking resource, which is why, you know, I know my concern about the public purse, because I am very, very aware of the strains upon it, but nevertheless, I'm also aware that we need to spend, because this is a big transformation here. So I just want it, you know, out there in the open and recorded so that people are aware of what we're doing, but we're doing it carefully, responsibly, with the best governance support that we can muster. Okay, so is there anything further from anyone? Because we need to note and agree the report. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to capital monitoring report then. Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is me again.
Yeah. No, it's not unfortunate. Very pleased to hear from you, Lisa.
Thank you very much. So this is a capital, the report in the same way as revenue presents the capital budget and all of the related information for the year in Appendix 1, and it does contrast with revenue in some fundamental ways. It's a much smaller budget, as you probably note from Appendix 1, just about 16 million combined. And that's there's a less volume of items going through this budget, albeit they are higher in value.
Yeah.
And they do have this legacy issue. So the items running through this budget will allow us to deliver our services.
Okay.
So it's about, isn't it, those places, our property portfolio, our vehicle replacement plan, infrastructure in terms of ICT and equipment. Since last report, it's the outturn is reduced by 3.3 million. And that in main is down to reductions in the vehicle replacement programme and just some bill slots that haven't been secured with our very, very small number of suppliers for appliances. It's a small market and it's a tough market. And even with the 26-week bill slot, they come in pieces, our appliances. If even the 26 weeks with an order, it's not from there. You've got to get a bill slot in, and we just missed the deadline of 31st of March for delivery for some of those water ladders, and they're coming in on the new year, and that's what's pushed this difference up between last report,
Okay,
which would have come again on the 4th of December. That's the last time you reported on this. Again, I won't go through this in detail because I trust you've read it.
I got questions.
Yes, so you will note, there's been very small change on the property portfolio. There's an £84,000 more than the last report on there. And there's, in terms of vehicles, that biggest changes is £3 million drop there, and there's a couple of items adding up to that, water ladders being one of them. And this falls under Brian's area, so it's quite opportunity, Brian. Operational equipment, £41,000 less than the last report, and ICT is 137 than previously reported. We finish off with joint co-location, and that relates to a system with the police down in Bridgend there, but the actual co-location system is between us and Mid and West Wales.
Okay.
What I'd like to draw your attention to is you've seen the overs and you've seen the unders, because they're actually identified on Appendix 1, which is this
Yes.
this year. What I've tried to set out for you on page 28 is, I'm aware that there's a £7.2 million forecast outturn. Yeah, that's our spend position. That's the value of the capital investment across all those categories I just mentioned.
Yeah.
There's a £1.053 million overspend there.
Yeah.
And what I want to try and do is explain any alarm you may have on that. And that's what this
questions.
that's what this table tries to do. Sometimes it's timing with capital projects because they are a bit bigger, and
Yes.
sometimes it's difficult to firm those costs up front because you just don't know what you're going to get with some of those things.
Can I just stop you there and say one
Yes.
thing I learned? Whatever anyone ever told me about capital spend, whatever the costs were proposed, they always came in over budget.
Double and time.
Okay, always. And and I'm not negating, people working on
Planning
it,
work, yeah.
planning and working, but it was, so I used to say, tell me how much it's really going to cost, because it's not 750k, it's going to be 1.3 million. Okay.
Yep.
So it would, it just the way it is, building costs and, and then post-pandemic things have gone up eventually.
They have, in property, yeah.
And so on and so forth. But, I always like to know what it's really going to cost. So that's what the questions I'll always ask you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
But and I know you're working within the parameters you work, Lisa, but just again, to note, these things always go up. They never come down. They always go up. So there we are.
So what this table tries to do for you is I've grossed out the net overspend. So the gross position is 1.2 million.
Yes.
And I'm telling you there that what we're going to do is 242,000 is paid for through co-location.
Okay.
Which is largely made up of that joint it's a contribution from Mid and West for the system.
Yeah.
£515,000 of that is made up of grant funding, and it's set out there against the many different schemes, church, you mentioned vehicle and whatnot.
Yeah.
130,000 of it is 0% financed, which is great for us because it doesn't attract any financing costs.
Yeah.
That's run through the revenue budget.
Yeah.
And then 165 are underspends elsewhere that can be used to prop up those overspends.
Yes.
So you almost got a net position then of we need to find another 166,000. So we've just travelled through from 1.2 million down to 166.
Which is a good direction to travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do.
Yeah.
We know when we set the budget, that's what we would like to do for the year. That's the aim, that's the plan. As all plans do change, we try and flex and we try and manage it. And that's what that table is trying to tell you there.
Yes, yeah. While we're talking about grant funded, I don't expect you to pluck this out of the air, but of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we've got in this column, are we anticipating any of these going?
No.
No.
So, sorry,
Go on.
we had a confirmation that the grant funding for national resilience areas.
Yeah.
There is national resilience has been
Okay,
confirmed, and in
Good.
fact, the capital element of the grant has increased
good.
this year as a result of a replacement programme for those appliances. And this is a really important area for Welsh Government and
Yeah.
a priority for continuous funding. There is an issue in relation to revenue funding. This is all Wales part of money, and the issue is in relation to it being a standstill budget for many years. In recognition, though, that there are savings to be made within to pay for those things. There are two key areas which we're focusing on from a national resilience perspective to identify what those savings will be.
Right.
First one is in relation to staffing, model group and search and rescue.
Okay,
It can be done more efficiently. So
Yeah.
we're looking at that. And the second one is in relation to something called the LTCM, which is the long-term capability management. And what that is basically the maintenance
okay,
of all of the equipment, which is done through a national arrangement at the moment
okay,
that we're seeking in Wales to step away from and put our own arrangements in place across the three services in
because it's
Wales,
cheaper.
significantly cheaper.
Okay, I get it,
Because
yeah.
we pay externally through national resilience to Babcock, we maintain currently.
Back off.
And as we step away from that, we can make significant savings. So we will be able to operate within the revenue budget and growth for some time if we look in those two areas from a
Interesting.
national perspective.
When will we know about that? You
So
will-
LTCM has got a plan for us to step away from,
Yeah.
and it isn't very far away now, and we're
Okay.
looking to put in place across Wales now somebody to coordinate that work, and we have staff that are working on that are already out to tender on and we've grouped areas of maintenance into lots, and those lots have gone out to tender, and suppliers are being examined and looked at as we speak, so to be able to step away from that, sure.
Good, good. Could you keep me informed on
Will
that?
do.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Lisa.
So I'm happy to take questions at that point, Chair.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll go back to page 22
Yep.
and 2.11 new in station.
Yes.
So the last paragraph there, the impact of this change of approximately 50k of search and planning fees are lost, and 80 months of planning and design work are in jeopardy should a new lease agreement not be signed. So we'd like regular updates on that.
That's when you get them, yeah.
Because we don't want 50k to go down the pan, and we want that sorted, the new in.
So on that front, that's gone. That's a sunk cost.
Is it?
That 50,000 was in relation to the original temporary site that's no longer available for us.
Right,
And that was a piece of land that was sort of round the corner from New Inn.
yeah,
So it was all search fees, design fees, things like that are no longer on the table.
okay,
Because we've had to find that alternative temporary site, and I briefed the chief on it separately.
right. So, and what about securing the lease then? So,
Yeah, so that's a process. So we in the midst of drafting heads of terms. So they are not binding until they are signed. And the
Okay.
reason we wouldn't sign them at the moment
Yeah.
is the new site that we've got, it's a lot easier for us.
Okay.
And this new site as an alternative potentially saves us about 600,000
okay,
because it's already an established building.
okay,
But what we've got in that building is it's an industrial unit, it's office, that's what it is. It's not a fire station. So we've got to go in there and we've got to, they've got to make some
Repurpose it.
changes for us. Now, those changes, I think,
Yeah.
you know, with my property head on, talking around 200,000 for those changes. The reason we wouldn't sign those heads of terms to secure that now, you'd be doing it blind and there's risk attached to it.
Okay.
And the risk is that 200,000 could turn into 2 million.
yeah,
Because once you've signed that agreement
yeah,
and you've said over to you for the design and the works,
yeah,
we're in their hands then. We very much want to know what we were walking into,
yes.
which is why there's a time lag now between
Yeah.
drafting those heads of terms, getting the designs done for that new premises and fit for purpose. We've already engaged with the station commander Simon Brown has been down there. We've shared plans with them, so we've already got the plans in place. With the office blocks, we sort of turning it into what we need is a mess room, kitchen, living area,
Yes,
you know, fit for
Yes,
our crews.
yeah,
So they are going to do that as the property owners.
okay, okay,
We are just going to be the lease tenant. So that's over to them to make those changes. They'll pass the cost on to us. So I'm very interested in knowing what they are before we sign that out terms.
yeah,
So we are in that, you know, transitional
Okay.
period. But they're quite keen to get us in is the good news.
Yes.
Because that's standing empty at the minute.
yes,
So I don't think it's going to take long, but it
okay.
is a process that we just have to sit out.
If you could you know, if we get updates,
Yes.
then that would be very, very helpful. But thank you for the explanation. That makes
No
a lot of
worries.
sense. On to the next one, 2.1.3, halfway down. So work on Treorchy Station commenced July 2023, due to complete in May. So the longer time frame is due to this discovery of asbestos and additional work. Do we review things generally, or is it when things happen? Because, you know, the asbestos within property is an issue across the public realm. I just wondered what we were doing on that.
So in the past, all services have done asbestos surveys of our sites to understand what the implications are. Now, often those surveys will be a combination of both invasive and non-invasive visual surveys. But what we tend to find, and this has happened in my previous service as well, when you actually start building work, then you find stuff that your invasive survey hasn't come across.
Yeah.
It's hidden within the fabric of the building.
Yes, is that,
And
isn't it?
you find that you know, only when you start to do the work, and which then you have to deal with and address as and when.
Yes, yeah, it's again, you know, I'm raising this as an awareness on costs on this really, because
Yeah, because we had planned, didn't we? We thought that it was going to be around 750,000. We thought it was going to take 6 months, but and it's a small piece within the fabric of the building. It is, but of course, as soon as that occurs, we find asbestos. We get HSC involved,
of course, yes.
and there's a controlled way of working and progressing that piece of work.
Yes.
So it has taken much longer than our original 6 months. It's more like 9-10 months. And that overspend on that project piece is all down to Treorchy's asbestos and control and removal of that.
Okay.
Everything else is pretty much as is.
Okay.
It will have a knock-on effect in terms of we would have liked to have picked up another station during last financial year. That hasn't happened, but you're well aware of why that is now.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I pick up underneath the table then?
Yes.
The note Monmouth has not been progressed as we are awaiting a decision as to whether this will be a co-location project. So a decision from who and when?
So I can put some more meat on the bone there, Chair. So I recently, there's been some discussion between the 3 emergency services in Wales in relation to the Monmouth site.
Yeah, I know the Monmouth site, you've got to really slow down even before 20 miles an hour was put in, because Monmouth, they have their own ways of working. You have to walk through that.
You'll be familiar with the fact then that there is an ambulance station which is no longer in use or has been mothballed. That it is then sort of very close to and linked to or the fire station next door.
Yeah.
So the desire originally was for that to be a tri-service site, and there was conversation and plans drawn up to that effect. However, those conversations did break down in relation to the ability for WAST to be part of that, because of their funding arrangements and the fact that they don't attract capital in the same way that the fire and rescue services do. And they have a very small capital pot, and any big, large scale capital it comes from central government in that regard. So they can't borrow, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the conversation was then moving towards it being a 2-service site, fire and police.
Yeah.
But then very recently, I've received correspondence from the chief exec of WAST asking if I'm still interested in it being a tri-service site, if he was able to find funding elsewhere. So he's exploring opportunities for external funding providers so that he can get back around the table to make it a tri-service site again. So we're sort of pausing our progression until such time as he comes back to us with an outcome from those discussions.
Which all sounds very positive, but we don't want to wait too long.
Of course. So this conversation only took place probably 10 days ago.
Yeah.
And so we paused it, and that's what reflected in the paper.
Okay.
But that won't be forever. We'll certainly have an answer within the next couple of weeks.
That would be very useful. Thank you very much. On the next page, so the 10th station is requested as a potential co-location with Blue Light Partners. Decisions yet come to fruition to date. My note there was, why is the decision delayed? But the chief had just explained it. And on the next page, 2.25 water carrier. I wondered why the tender process had been unsuccessful.
This is a very difficult market. The fleet engineer tells me no suppliers came forward to take the work on, basically.
Really?
Yeah. We've had trouble with this particular area for the last 2 years. Now, he tells me that isn't jeopardising our operational response in any way, because you've got a current provision there. It's merely ageing.
Yes.
So what he proposes to do
Like
this
your-
year. Yes. And like wine, it'll be very well received, I'm sure. So I think what he proposes to do, we've had 2 years of trying the same thing. This isn't working. He wants to tweak the spec a little bit. So he's doing some, so it opens up the market for new bidders to come in.
Yeah.
He's working with stations. He's doing a bit of engagement with stations to see if the home tender.
Surely other fire
works.
brigades in England, do you know what I mean? They must be able to get these things.
Not always. It's a very, very limited market for
Is
these
it?
types of vehicles. Water ladders, all we do, they're quite technical.
Okay.
You know, there's no secondary market for them either, is there?
So, sorry, Chair, this one was, I remember being involved in this back when I was in operational plans. It was very bespoke and unique.
Okay.
The current one that we got now, which has come to its end of, will come into its end
Yeah.
of life. So at least to summarise it really well there, we'll just be reconfiguring that with end user engagement.
Okay.
So, you know, the firefighters actually use this bit of kit, so
So we
it's,
should be able to have it, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
We need it, so we need to be able to buy one.
it's going to be less technical essentially and just more basic, but deliver what it's supposed to, which is like additional water when you need it.
Because what it effectively is a bowser, isn't it?
Yeah, so Chair, when I read the paper pack initially, I had a very similar question to you in relation to and I think this is partially answered, the risks to the organisation. So whilst there is an ageing element to the vehicle, one of the big issues there with ageing elements is the fact of replacement parts.
Yeah.
In the event of the vehicle going faulty, that is becoming a problem where suppliers don't support vehicles or don't support them much longer than about 15 or so
No,
years.
we want you to buy a new one.
More
Yeah.
and more difficult to get parts in that space.
Yes.
So I wanted to confirm, and I think this is gone away and spoken to the head of fleet to confirm that parts are still available for this vehicle.
Yeah.
So we can continue to maintain it.
Okay.
So the risk is minimal. It's
Yes.
just an issue of procurement now.
Yes. Yeah. Good. My next point on the next page, 2.3 operational equipment. Again, you know, I've said about spelling earlier, mannequins. Okay, 2.3, well, you don't spell mannequins like that. There's a Q in there. And 2.3.2, this will see a gradual upgrade of fuel tanks. Again, you know, I'm asking about updates on progress on that.
Okay.
Okay. And you'll be pleased to know that the only other point I've got is on the next page, evaluation and conclusion. Just to note my concerns, revenue contributions because of implications on other budget lines. That's just my comment on that.
Okay.
So, Kirsty.
Thank you. I appreciate this is like a retrospective look, isn't it, on last year. I'm just wondering if somebody could explain to me the process of coming up with the capital improvement plan. How does the organisation make decisions on how to spend capital going forward? Because I know I know that you've been out and about and you've come back with some comments about, oh my goodness, I think we probably need a bit of improvement here. And I'm just wondering how do those capital plans form in this organisation?
Okay. So I'll give you how it comes through to me as an investment piece.
Sure.
We've had one capital strategy drafted, which Geraint did a few years ago, which needs a refresh now. Geraint, it looks at a 20 to 30 year time horizon, doesn't it, for all of our main elements of property portfolio, vehicle replacement plan, and those infrastructure pieces on operational equipment and ICT. The way that comes into us, that how we translate that into a financial plan is we get bids in annually. So for our service departments, such as where you did have, or when you haven't got it anymore, they would put a bid into us and say, I want this because of this. Other bits, such as recurring items, property, the bigger pieces, property and vehicles, there's a long-term plan there. With property, there's a 5 to 10 year plan. With a vehicle replacement plan, there's a 10-year plan. And it looks at the profile of our pieces and the estimated useful life of those pieces. So we know when something needs renewal, that's when it comes into the capital budget, and that's how it's built.
And then how does that then work its way through the scrutiny and challenging and governance in the organisation? How does that work?
So generally we would, sorry, Chief, are you all right if I just?
I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay. So
You carry on.
from a bid point of view, because of course, I guess you're thinking anybody could bid for anything.
Yeah.
Where's the limits,
Yeah.
right? So we touched on this during the TMSS, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement.
Yeah.
We need to know what our investment requirements are, because generally with capital, there are things that you need to do now, a bit later and much later,
Yes.
which is why you need that longer term view on
It's your
things.
household budget. I know it's
Yes.
simplistic, but it's as simple as that.
It-
What have we
it
got to
is.
prepare today?
Yes.
What can we hang on for 6 months? And
Yeah.
what do we need next year?
So we collate that, and then we look at what the whole part of it and what the impact is then for funding it. Because actually getting the stuff is one thing. How are you going to finance it is something else. We don't get funding for this, as you know. So if we could go for something super ambitious, 20, 30 million, what that'll mean is you need to cut somewhere else in your
Yes.
revenue budget to support it, because you will have statutory charges in there.
Yeah.
And this all ties back into that conversation we had about prudential borrowing.
Yeah.
You are limited on your capital investment by affordability in your revenue budget, because you've got to fund it with interest, statutory
Yes,
charges,
yeah.
things like that.
So where does that plan come then, Lisa? Does it come back to this committee?
It does.
It comes back into here.
So you would have approved the high level capital investment as part of that TMSS.
Yeah.
And we did that the 28th of March, didn't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So you'll have a first look when we bring the revenue budget through to you,
Mhm.
which we'll probably start in draft format September through to December. We'll have a consultation budget then. We'll go out to our local authorities to see if there's any feedback then. Set it by
That's
the
when they
15th.
start, because they start theirs. Budget starts
Yes.
1st of September, really.
Yes,
Yeah.
because you get that summer feast on it,
Yes.
that break, and
Yeah.
we come back. We ask our departments to feed into us. It'll be around June, July. So and then the finance team will collate the detail of that, and we build it up from the bottom,
Okay.
very much like bricks in a house, you know. But then we come back with the revenue budget then in the autumn, and when we set that in February, we'll have a draft capital plan behind that, because of course you need one, because you need to know how you're going to finance it. And then we get that looked at in more detail when it comes back to you again then in the TMSS.
About overspend here. That, previously I've been in organisations, because capital could be really tricky, can't it?
Yeah.
To land, we've got kind of like plan Bs, so we've got kind of like our top list of things, but actually that might not pan out for a whole variety of reasons. And, it's not the case here, because we don't have a capital grant, but I've seen money sent back to Cardiff, which breaks my heart.
Yes, yeah.
Not the same scenario.
Breaks my heart. But,
Yeah.
but it's about, making sure we've got kind of like contingencies. So it's a bit different, isn't it?
It is different, because I think that without capital,
You're in more control.
a little bit more. I mean, there's ups and downs to the system that we got, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if we start sort of like Treorchy, we're halfway through it, and we haven't completed by the 31st of March, we're not going to stop it, are we?
No.
We need to, this is why you need to slip the budget. You wouldn't do this with revenue, but with capital, you
Yeah.
need to slip that
Yeah.
project money forward to
Yeah.
complete that piece.
Yeah.
And it's about quality for us. It's not just about
Yeah.
coming in on budget.
Yeah.
We want something that's
Yeah.
quality,
Yeah.
fit for purpose,
Yeah.
because it needs to sit there for like 30-year time
Yes.
horizon.
No, I'm very aware of slippage in capital.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
one of the big differences between capital and revenue, isn't it?
Yes.
I was just going to add, what I was going to add was the issue when other people send money back to Welsh Government, we sometimes benefit from,
Okay.
because we're able to actually spend it quickly.
I'm so pleased for you.
We're able to, we're able to actually
TV money.
spend it quite quickly. It's something that's really worthwhile, and it's really beneficial to have packages on the shelf
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
So that-
Shovel-ready schemes.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm getting to, is that, it's a horrible feeling to have to send it back for one dog, not having done your homework and planned ahead to know if that project doesn't pan out, there are other things we can do. Thank you.
If I could add to that, probably experience at least on the iPad, and so those requests that come in, the plans have always probably been over ambitious compared to what we can genuinely afford in terms of financial capacity. So there will always be those bits probably sitting there, which you can, if something drops off, you can probably easily pull forward. So we have a very ambitious plan.
And we've tried to do that, haven't we? Because our ORM team, Ops Risk Management team, they've always been good at, scoping out and investing in cutting edge equipment for the organisation. And they come to the end of a big cutting equipment programme recently, didn't they? And I think that what we've tried to do with them is, instead of focusing them on spending the money in the year, we've set up a reserve for them, and the mechanism runs through the revenue budget so that we can look at, don't worry about the 31st of March cut-off, just worry about what you need to invest in. Just worry about that piece. So the job is not about spending money, the job is about doing what we need to do, getting things in, not worrying about that date. Because the psychology of it causes some strange behaviours, service managers, which is what you don't want.
Yeah, and some really bizarre decisions and.
Yeah, quick ones, not necessarily good ones.
Yeah, no, make sure you buy your cassette recorder, in school before the 31st of March. I mean,
Then you've got a pile of them then.
yeah, I don't want it, really.
By the time people come to you, somebody broke.
CD.
Yeah.
No, I know, I had one. Good.
Sit there on a Sunday night, pressing, play and record.
Yeah.
The pops.
Can you afford the record?
No.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes,
What you
please.
can.
Yeah.
There's mention of asbestos here. Have we got any rack? Has anybody looked?
No.
Yeah, we
rack?
did do an
We did a
assessment.
survey. Where we are at the minute, we did the walk around assessment. So we've got a property team. They made up of tradespeople. It's a small team. So they effectively behave as project managers. But they do walk-arounds regularly of our portfolio. They did that walk-around, they thought that we could have added in 3 or 4 sites.
Yeah.
So what we've commissioned now is a structural engineering survey just to bottom it off, because you don't always know. You can guess if it's there, but you don't always know if it is there. Sometimes you've got to test it by drilling through. But
Okay.
it hasn't hit us the same way as the schools.
Yeah, and yet, but,
The hospitals.
Yes.
and yet very, ostensibly very few schools by comparison, I know there's hugely large numbers in England.
They're so old.
Yeah, but there's, yeah, but still, that was a, bit of a lucky break for us, because
Yeah.
England is, because I deal with English schools now, it's just unbelievable.
With your bush and never all over with it.
Are they? Oh dear.
Sorry, that's great. I just wanted to check that we done that work.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. It looks like as if there's potential for 3, although we don't really think so. Just to get a definitive position on it, we want that structural survey to come in. So if you want an update on that next time, I can bring it.
Yes, indeed. Right. Okay. So to note this report then, if there's nothing further from everyone? Yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to register of gifts and hospitality. Is that you, Sarah?
That's me, yes. So
Okay.
I'll be very brief for this one. This is just reporting to yourselves a position on an annual basis of gifts and hospitality that have been received, whether accepted or declined by officers, any of the previous fire authority members, and similarly yourself as commissioners, you will be required to disclose any gifts that you were to be offered or received. So it was picked up by the internal audit team. Stephen's on the call with us today. A number of years ago, that it would be good practice to report that on an ongoing basis. And it was accepted that we do that on an annual basis, because as you can see from the table in Appendix 1, there's not a great deal of transactions that go through our register. So it's there for information, obviously, and to give you assurances that we do record and capture, but also it shows on some occasions where hospitality is offered, we do actually decline it as well. So it's not common practice just to accept because people offer you a gift. Obviously, there's risks attached to gifts and hospitality with the incentives, especially through procurement processes. So it's something that we do try to dissuade officers and officials from engaging in acceptance. but where they are low value and there is no influence that deemed to be swayed by the process, it can be accepted, but it has to be approved either by myself as managing officer or Sarah as deputy managing officer.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Gary. My comment would be that we need a continuous need of awareness of these issues, and we need a close adherence by all staff to procedures. And just a comment on Appendix 1. We have nothing prior to Jan 2024? Because that's the
No,
only,
this is the list for the full year.
the full year, right, okay. That's fine. Okay, any other comments? Right. Okay.
The only thing I was probably just thinking when I was prepping for the meeting this morning is rather than do an annual report on this in the the age of modern technology, this is something that we perhaps produce electronically, keep on our open forum pages and publicize widely, so it negates the need to report it back.
Yeah,
And it's there open and transparent for anybody to see.
okay, let's do that then, going forward, but ensure that that is, is there, so that the public can see.
Yeah.
What's happening. Hopefully, always has been and is currently and will continue to be less of a problem for this service than other parts of the public service, so that's good. Okay, moving on then, agenda item 8, internal audit process report. Who's this now? Is this Geraint?
So again, Steen is joining us again.
Morning, Steve.
Honestly, okay,
Morning.
so I won't spend too much time. I've just prepared a covering report, and this basically covers off the 5 audit reports that have been completed since the last time we met.
Yeah.
So the last reporting on this would have been the 4th of December. So the 5 there, you've got a station visit. It's an annual piece. That's an important area for us. They visit there every year. Budget control, again, it's an annual piece. Some of them are set on a biannual basis. And then we've got contract management, collaboration and assurance review of the Office 365 ICT project. There's nothing to worry about in terms of those audit reports. They're all a good assurance level with substantial assurance for the budgetary control report in particular, which I'm pleased to say. So I'd just like to hand you over to Steen to take you through them in a little more detail. Are you all right, Steen?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think before again to the reports, just to flag a couple of the points you've been picking up and discussing. So capital planning and anti-fraud we've got in the plan for 24-25. So we'll be looking in a bit more detail at both of those areas this year, and we'll report back in terms of the findings for those. So just wanted to say that before I forgot and went through the other report. So if I briefly introduce each of the reports and take any questions at each stage, if that's okay. So the first report you've got in your package, station visits. As Lisa said, this is an annual review we undertake, looking at usually kind of 2 hold time and 1 on-call station at a time. It's what we call a compliance review. So we're looking particularly at types of transactions, particular checks around health and safety, financial administration, and equipment checks as well, as you would have seen from the recommendation. So reasonable assurance this time round, just 1 recommendation relating to asset inventory reconciliations. I think it's probably just useful to be clear we're talking about fixtures and fittings rather than operational equipment. That's on a different system, and we did do checks on terms of the operational equipment as per the Red Kite system, and there were no issues there. So it's just the kind of fixtures and fittings within the building itself. So happy to take any questions on the station visits report.
Surprisingly, I have no questions. It's a detailed report, and it appears that you are happy with what was happening here. But if anyone else has any comments on it, please. No? Right, move on to the next one then, please, Steen. No, we don't have any questions. Please, if you could move
Okay,
on.
thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So the next one in your pack is budgetary control, and this is looking at all of the areas kind of the Lisa described in terms of the process you asked about. So I think it's substantial assurance. We can give you that assurance that all of those processes are in place. We've sought and been provided with evidence of those. So I think obviously it's key at the moment with the restrictions on funding that these things are important, I think some good practice noted, I think, is worth noting as well. Budget holders are always the key in terms of budget control, and particularly for emergency services and for the service itself. Often those individuals aren't of a financial background, so it's useful and it's important to have the correct guidance and training and support and all of the evidence of that. Also good feedback from budget holders in terms of the support that they get from the centre, from Lisa's team, as part of the kind of their role and the support they get for their budgetary monitoring purposes. As I say, substantial assurance and no recommendations. Happy to take any questions.
Well, for me, I'm very pleased to note that it is substantial assurance, so it's green. And again, I haven't picked up anything throughout the notes that I need any further clarification on, because the notes are quite detailed. Thank you. Geraint?
Yeah, just for Commissioner's awareness, really, on the back of such a good report like this with the key financial controls and an outstanding report which we had on the annual statement of accounts last year, which was the cleanest external audit report I've ever seen in my career in the service. I nominated the accountancy team for the Finance Wales Awards.
Good. Did we win?
They've been shortlisted, so the awards is on the 16th of May. So we'll find out if they were successful.
What is that?
It's a Thursday.
Thursday night?
Yeah.
Where?
It's the Holland House Hotel.
On Newport Road.
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
it's the Finance Wales Awards.
Well,
So I attended the judging panel last week and
right.
presented my case, and hopefully they'll be
Well, if
successful.
we can, at least one of us should be there. One of the commissioners should be there for that event.
I don't know if that works like that. You have to send a team, I think, rather than one of us.
They are.
The team are going.
Team will go, or they'll go firstly, but we need to, you know, yeah.
As chair, are you volunteering yourself?
It's subject to parliamentary business on a Thursday, because normally I can get away, but I couldn't yesterday and I can't next week. And if the Prime Minister keeps changing our stuff around, then I'm afraid I'm stuck there till 2 o'clock in the morning, but I will do my best. And the lights are still on then at 2 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to attend that, because I think that, you know, again, for me, that's part of our public duty.
Both?
Yeah, I'm happy to attend also,
Yeah.
so to show that support to
Yeah.
staff.
But sometimes I don't go for the meal and the stuff like that. I just turn up for the awards.
Okay,
Okay.
that could be a compulsory part.
Yeah, no,
Me.
yeah, no, I've done too many years of those things. All right. so should we check it
Let
out?
me know where you are with your diary then, and we'll
Yeah.
sort out the tickets and we.
Or if one of my fellow commissioners.
Oh, I've had a lifetime of those.
No, no, but I think, you know, as an aside, I think it's important that we are part of that as well.
And I just obviously for the work Chris Barton had done in the background, I thought it'd be good if Chris.
Absolutely. Yes, you can give me a lift then. See, he lives near me. Okay, no, joking aside, but excellent. And Steve, thank you very much. So if you want to move on to the contract management, is it? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this one is reasonable assurance. We're looking at the arrangements for contract management. So as part of that, we took a sample of contracts. We looked at structural firefighters, protective equipment, supply maintenance, breathing apparatus, electrical reactive and response repairs. And we also looked at building maintenance across the kind of the trades, plumbing, painting, decorating, and reactive and general maintenance again. As I say, reasonable assurance, just one important recommendation. I think the kind of the underlying finding was there was a need for more formal contract management arrangements to be put in place. I think day to day, all of those individuals responsible for those 4 contracts that I spoke about were meeting with the contractors and managing kind of the day-to-day issues, but probably a need to implement more formal contract management management arrangements to manage things like poor performance, delivery, those types of things. And as you can see from the comments received back on the report, that was accepted, and those arrangements will be put in place through a more kind of formal contract manual type structure. So, again, happy to take any questions.
When will we know if this is working better?
Yes, we undertake an annual follow-up. So it's usually undertaken towards the end of the year. We're actually in the process of gathering evidence for 22-23. but they will undertake that probably in the last quarter 24-25, and feedback that through a report to yourselves.
Okay, I'll just, as an addendum to that question, really, because my kind of overall question to you and to us about this is I would like much closer updates of the work that you're doing. And, you know, whatever format that takes, I'll discuss with Lisa and with Geraint. But, you know, I want a much greater handle on external audit, not to, obviously, not to influence anything because you're external, but I want much closer understanding of how it goes, of what happens and how it happens, and, you know,
I think it would
going forward.
It would be great to have you in on the when we put the annual programme of internal audit together.
Yeah.
That's a really good discussion. It takes place between the monitoring officer, the treasurer, myself, and you, Steve, because it's more of a scope and an horizon scanning exercise, talking about risks,
Yeah.
what's coming up for us, but more importantly, what's happening across the piece,
Yeah.
what feeds into that.
Yeah.
So we did that in February this year, and we've got a programme. We brought it to commissioners on the 28th of March, so you would have seen that there.
Yes.
So it's a good piece to look at, because it doesn't just give this year, it gives the rolling programme.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, what we can do in the year with that programme is, if you've got anything popping up significant that we didn't expect, can re-divert days, because we've got 71 days with you, Steve, TIA. The 70, I guess 70.
Sounds right, Lisa. I think it's 75. If
Yeah.
it's about that,
Yeah.
Again, apologies, but it has to be a Friday because, you know, I know that in fact, we are actually working in the House of Lords today, but I actually ran away last night without no one looking, because I knew I had this important day today in South Wales. There we are. But if Rishi soon I could put the votes on today, I would have had to stay, I'm afraid. But he's put the votes on Monday, because they should have been Tuesday. So that's why they pulled the plug, you see. They changed the day to stop people turning up. But
And then you would have had me, and I wouldn't have noticed any of the sign mistakes.
I dispute that. Yes, thank you. So noted that. So next one then, assurance review of collaboration co-location. Steve, please.
Thank you, Chair. Another reasonable assurance report, because we're looking at kind of the contract arrangements again in terms of the co-locations in place. One important recommendation, which is to standardise kind of the charging mechanism for each of the co-locations. As you appreciate, it kind of these things get put in place over time, but at a point in time, it becomes more important to make sure that those things are standardised both for yourselves and for the other partners in relation to the co-location. Yeah,
okay, that's all straightforward to me. If anyone's got anything.
That's part of a much larger piece of work that we've been doing. The co-location has grown with us over the years.
Yeah.
And what we've also been doing as part of that project, work with our legal officer internally, property, and guys trying to put a standard set of documentation together as an agreement with and that covers usage, so there's codes of conduct, gym usage, all those sorts of things as well. It's a bigger piece than just the charging mechanism, because when we co-locate, we are almost living together, don't we? You know, when they're we're going to do that success.
Is there a drift on this idea?
Yes. So over time, what tends to happen is you have an agreement in place with what's that building's going to be used for, and ultimately that starts to change over time where the partners potentially see the benefits of a new shiny building, and can see that they want to bring other people in from elsewhere to start some other courses and things like that. And so that then puts an additional burden on the site and the people who work in there on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So this is about making sure that we have arrangements in place where all of that is very clear from the outset, so that you can refer back to if you need to have a conversation to recalibrate some of that with partners.
Yeah.
I can understand the boundaries can become blurred. With use. So yeah. Okay. Right. Then, if there's nothing further on that, the assurance review of 0635 implementation, which again is reasonable assurance, but Steve, if you could you know, pick up on, because you've got some, three important action points here.
Yeah, so three important recommendations to routine. I think probably summarised in terms of the need to put in formal project management arrangement as within the service, and in particular around IT projects in this context. And the recommendations are all kind of geared towards that. So I'm happy to take any questions in terms of the report.
Okay. Well, we talked about IT earlier, didn't we? And, you know, modern.gov. So I don't know if that comes into this delivery area, but
I suppose I just add in share in relation to the recommendations around project management as a whole for the organisation. I suggest that the maturity in relation to implementation of projects through project management is probably not where it needs to be, and so we are looking to introduce elements of project management in the appropriate places. I'm not talking here of, you know, the full Prince 2 approach, but I am talking about a light touch project management approach in a variety of different settings. In the first place that we are applying that is through our work to develop the cultural review and the thematic review recommendations.
well, they're pretty important.
So we'll be managing those in a project management style as we build our experience, our training and so on. It seems that with awareness of the requirements of project management.
Do we need some extra help there?
It's likely that we will, training requirements and qualifications and courses. We do have some people that have some skills and expertise in project management from previous roles that they've had in other organisations that we can benefit from. But ultimately, as we develop our own internal expectations around project management, that will come with some costs. But I haven't got a figure on that at the moment. It's a great opportunity now that we have a new Director of Transformation and Change who has a background in this space for us to start to build what that picture looks like going forward.
Yeah, because, you know, if it circles back to the comments I made earlier about having, you know, we are going to have to spend some money.
For sure.
That might be an area, yeah. But within the, as we discussed, you know, in the European context. Okay. I think that's it, isn't it, Steve? I can't seem to find anything else.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. Just to mention that we TIA have begun kind of planning the dates in or looking at suggested dates for the 24-25 work, and we started that last week. We're going to try and conclude it this week, and then the dates will come out to Lisa and her team to try and get some of the audits booked in for next year.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of the committee, thank you very much for the reports and the work that you and your company are doing. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
So, moving on to, so they're all noted for the record. So agenda item number 9, business plan actions. You taking this or?
I'll take the introductory papers and I'll pass over to Geraint to take us through the actual detail of it. But ultimately,
Wasn't in my original.
So the report that is the covering report articulates that the report that's in the pack was sort of produced at a moment in time, and that moment in time was prior to any intervention from Welsh Government, prior to the implementation of commissioners and the new management team being put in place. And the contents within the report captured from updates that are submitted by various different departments across the organisation into a business management information system, and then collated into a report. And on reflection of the report when it was completed, it's very clear that the tone, the style, the language within that report is very much suggesting that the position for the organisation was, you know, everything was working very well and performance was where it needed to be. And clearly on reflection that couldn't possibly have been the case, because if it was the case, then there would have been a need for intervention in the way that we've all now experienced. So therefore, this report, or the covering report, seeks to suggest that we recognise this report for what it was, which was a moment in time when positive reaffirmation of everything working well seems to have been reported, and very little in terms of things that weren't working well. And that we note that the report has been produced, but we also recognise that moving forward, there is a point in revisiting and redrafting this report, because in effect it's sort of rewriting history potentially. We move towards a position where we start to now reflect on future position based upon the time since the committee has been in place and the work that we do is. So the recommendations that are contained within this government report suggest that we note the contents of the report, but we do recognise that from a moment in time, the internal perspective related to performance different than it was today. And that secondly, the commissioners note that planned amendments to the planning and reporting process that will ensure future reports against the business plan are more accurate, and that's opened out in the report as to how we're going to achieve that. So there's a section within the report that describe how, first of all, the position of the information being put into the BMIS system needs to be far more accurate, far more quality assured, and far more honest in relation to the position of what is working well and what is not working well, and that the safeguards and quality assurance of those as they are collated into the overarching report has far more scrutiny on it as well before it's included in a pack that's put in the public domain. So and the final item there, the final recommendation is that the commissioners agree that we don't churn out a report in quarter four, which is likely to look very similar because the information that's contained within the BMIS system will be equally as probably inaccurate. But we do start from quarter one with a far more accurate position for reporting going forward. I'm not sure that there's much point in going through the contents within the report unless there are specific questions, and we sort of accept the fact that the proposal is that we accept the fact that the report is far too positive and not a true and accurate reflection of the condition of the organisation within during this period.
If the report was accurate, Chief, then the Deputy Minister would not have implemented the actions, the unprecedented actions that she did by bringing in 4 commissioners to the service. So I will pass over to Gary, but my point is I see very little point in discussing this in any detail. But please.
Yeah, I won't go through the detail of the report. I suppose just with a forward view of now really of how we compile the report going forward is
That's much more
obviously
positive, yeah.
the aim. I think the overall aim was that the departmental plans are feeding in a golden thread up through the strategic plan,
It was a very
corporate plan,
which
is what the corporate plan that you approved in the last meeting. Obviously sets up what the strategic aims, strategic themes are. So what we need to do is find a more robust process of capturing the work that's ongoing, and more importantly, as the Chief said, capturing the improvements that need to be made to meet those strategic aims, but also to highlight areas where there are challenges and not be afraid to report if there's issues that are causing problems in not achieving the work that departments have within their plans. So I think it's changing the mindset and culture around how we report some of that detail, and presenting that in a way to yourself as commissioners on a more high level basis with that level of detail maintained within departments should you need to delve down deeper and scrutinise, but not necessarily present to you on a regular basis that level of detail.
Yes.
But obviously the report is made up in 2 parts as well. So it's the business plan actions and then performance against strategic indicators. That is probably something that you will need to keep a closer eye on, indicators. But again, it's the work that's going on in the background to achieve the performance against those indicators. And again, the conversation I had with the Chief is how we present the performance against those indicators needs improving as well. So there's a big piece of work going on to improve these sort of 2 elements of the report across the piece to give you the confidence and satisfaction that the service is doing what it needs to do. It gives you a clearer picture of what we need to do to improve, But it also gives you a clearer picture of the challenges that may be causing some issues in not achieving what the aims are.
Yeah, I mean, yes, thank you, Garrett. I'm not going to pick up on parts of this report that are really very difficult to digest. So I'll leave it there. Kirsty.
Yeah, so given that the focus is very much on like for the future. So I think what you just talked about Gary, is absolutely what we need. We need an integrated performance and quality report, don't we?
Yeah.
Which we can track performance against, probably report an exception. So rather than report everything, it's the bit that's causing you difficulties that the commissioners need to hear about. So reporting by exception, the things that are of concern, and also in that performance report, looking at kind of continuous improvement. But I think what this piece of work speaks to is the need to have really clear broad to board communication and reporting, which I suspect probably hasn't happened. And that hasn't happened because of culture. And I think you're absolutely right, Gary. It's about creating a culture here, isn't it? A culture of psychological safety for staff who know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to
Ask questions.
Well, okay to ask questions, but okay to ask for help, okay to hold their hand up and say, look, things aren't very good in my department. We're not doing what we need to do.
Yeah.
I'm really worried. And to see that as a good thing rather than a bad thing. And so, yeah, so that needs, doesn't it, kind of like a whole organisation approach to developing that culture, psychological safety, of wraparound support for anybody that is struggling, or any departments that are struggling, or anything that is struggling in the organisation, and then reporting back to the commissioners an integrated performance and quality report, demonstrating, I think, you know, hopefully a process of continuous improvement and learning, and, you know, and if necessary, some kind of escalation. So how would we, you know, what do we do? How do we respond if somebody tells us something is going badly, or we discover through a process of triangulation that something is going badly? How do we as an organisation then have a process that responds to that, puts that extra support in when it needs to, and then withdraws that extra support when that part of the organisation is doing really well? So I think that's what we probably want to get to, isn't it? But that culture, that psychological safety within the organisation that says it is not just okay, but it's absolutely necessary that you stick your hand out if you're worried, and that's going to be fine because the organisation is going to wrap around you to support you and your team to do better. That's what we've got to get to, rather than fear. And I'm going to put these figures in because if I keep them off my back, that's what we need to get to.
Can I respond? I completely agree. I think we need to get ourselves to a position in every space where people have confidence to state their case, because the only thing that happens when they don't is things get worse.
Yes.
They escalate and become bigger problems than they need to be. And you know, we've talked about this being indicative of culture, and it's the same space that we're in when we're talking about people who you know, in receipt of bad behaviour, and they fear that they can't raise their hand around those things, and they want to do it anonymously. It's this fear of repercussion, and we need to break that cycle by sort of communicating more widely with our staff, you know, encouraging them, you know, and also, as and when they do it, that they actually receive the appropriate response in every space. You know, they receive the support in relation to the business processes or any other place where they want to raise their hand. So yeah, it's very closely linked to culture, and it's no wonder, knowing what we now know, that the report has been written in the way that it's been written.
But we need to draw a line and we need to move forward.
Yeah, and that's in
The
time.
best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is to plant the tree today.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do. We need to plant a new tree.
Yes, indeed. So we note the recommendations and
note the covering paper.
and yes. Okay. I just have just again, so I read every page of these reports. It just happens to be Newport on page 152. And in the third bullet point down, the second point there, bariatric incidents increased from 23 to 21. It means you should say decreased, surely that's a typo. Yeah. Yeah, that's all.
We're on the next page, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did not notice you there, Dean. So over to you, Dean.
Yeah, so Dean will cover off the performance aspect then, which is,
Yeah.
so again, something that the chief of discusses around how we present this, I think some of the way in which the performance data is presented.
Okay, so I'll restate my point later. Dean, please.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of this cross-reference is over to the Board of Commissioners meeting at the end of March.
Yeah.
We talked around projections for next year and targets.
Yeah.
And key performance indicators. So the report in front of you indicates obviously a raft of data which goes through quarter 1 to quarter 3 for 2023 to 2024, giving us the key indicators on page 138. That gives us the indication of where we are in terms of performance. As noted at the end of March, it's a similar picture. The targets is 5, 6 that agree, and then we've got 2 just shown in red, which we're aware of. And that's the alarms, and obviously we have special service calls as well. The things that are increasing for us is in terms of these targets would be assisting other agencies. That's increased significantly, particularly assistance to ambulances.
Yeah.
Bariatric patients, as you just noted, these are Jeff, and there's a few others under the special service calls categories as well. That is causing us a significant increase. There's lots of partnership discussions ongoing, and the chief having those with his colleagues in West in particular, so we could address some of those concerns that has been created over time and within society as well. The rest of the pages then give you an indication of all the performance data for quarters 1 to 3 throughout the year. And then we've also got a breakdown on pages 1, 4, 6, which breaks down the unitary authorities into the data for each of those indicators. I think I'll probably Chair, there's a lot of data. It's a good questions.
Yeah.
I'm not happy to answer.
Well, I would just note, obviously, the Audit Wales report about the false alarm reduction, because that's part of our terms of reference as well. So, I'm glad to see that we are making more use of data and that we're learning from elsewhere to identify opportunities. So I would reiterate that as very important. And the typo on the Newport one, it would be the Newport one, wouldn't it? Because I looked at them all and I thought that you're going to think I only looked at Newport, but I thought of a blind Gwent as well. There we are. Keep.
Can I add to what's being said there? So the issues on page 139 that are described around it and down this is an area of focus for us as an organisation, because staff also they're bearing out an awful lot of these calls in their view are not calls that are within the memorandum of understanding currently. So I've agreed with the chief executive of WAST for us to do a piece of work where we start to collate more detail in relation to these, so that we can have a conversation together about times, dates and places about where the appropriate agency may not have been involved in the first instance. And the second area that's in there, which is something I'm very keen to keep an eye on, is the issue around suicide and attempted suicide calls, because the police have introduced or in the process of introducing a phased approach. So right place, right person, right care. And that and the implications of that approach means that obviously they will respond, so who will. And so the risk is that the police for many years has been the agency of last resort, and that moves across to audit, we're not careful.
Yes.
So I think that it's an area that we continue to keep an eye on and be interested as the other phases of this work rolls out from the police's perspective.
Okay. Keep us updated on that, because that's it's an important precedent, isn't it? We've got to be careful about, again, this cross fertilization of who's responsible, or who takes the rap as well. And things. Right.
Thank you, Chair. So, Dean's aware there's just some additional stuff that Dean said there is we've recognised that we've been really good at gathering data as an organisation, but we need to be better at the interpretation and the taking action.
Yeah.
So we've had data like this for a while now. So what we've got is a separate meeting, now meeting where once a quarter we get the relevant stakeholders in.
Yeah.
And go, right, let's look for the cause, the facts, the trends, let's identify, what's the analysis here behind this data, because data's just telling us one picture.
Yes.
So then we can identify if there's any trends and then it's a community safety message or community engagement event is necessary. So we've moved into that space now where we're starting, we got the data, now it's let's interpret it and then let's take action. So we've got separate meetings around that. So it's not just dry data, there's actions like the chief just referred to there, conversations.
Yeah.
So we're moving more into the interpretation, taking action.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Yeah, I think the so what question is one we need to ask ourselves, isn't it? So what? We've got this, and what does it tell us, and what are we going to do about it? And how we can use that data to strategically plan the service going forward. Can I ask you, obviously, Midwest made an announcement, haven't they, recently about false alarms and how they're going to deal with false alarms in the months to come. So they've given due notice, haven't they, about what they're going to do. And I'm just wondering whether you've had any discussions with colleagues in Mid and West around their approach, how they've got to that decision, and whether there's anything that we can learn from the approach in Mid and West.
So I'm probably able to answer that as well, Chair, thank you. So the work that is about to go live in Mid and West Wales, in fact they're turning the switch on the 1st of July. They're a little further down the line than we are. Now we are in that space of wanting to very shortly begin our engagement with communities, with business owners and partners and stakeholders across the piece, to raise awareness about the criteria that we're going to be using. Now, there is a difference in the criteria between ourselves and Mid and West Wales, and that to me seems to be the wrong direction of travel. We need, especially when we have a joint control room, who are dealing with responding to these calls and ultimately making decisions for two different services. It's one thing having a set of rules that are historic, two services came together, but when you are implementing something new, we could try to be on the same page.
Yes.
And so I've instigated recent work, and I know that yesterday there was conversations that were taking place between all three services in Wales to try to get on the same page. But we are working towards an implementation date of the 1st of January, which gives us the lead-in time to do all of that education and awareness for the public. But we really need, before Mid and West go live with their criteria, to get somewhere closer to being on the same page.
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful. And there's an advantage, isn't it, not going before them, because we can, reflect on what's gone well, not gone well, and any issues, so that we can avoid some of the pitfalls that they might have come across. So there's an advantage in not being at first. But thank you. That's really reassuring, and I think Welsh Government would be really pleased to hear about the progress.
Yes, good. We've got an answer. We're on it. Okay, so thank you for that. So we noticed that report. So last but one point, forward work programme. My comment on this is that this is a live document. It's ongoing, and that we can note it, but we note that we may need to amend or change things.
Tis just a plan, and hopefully be increasing as we.
I'm sure it will be, Gareth. I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, it's just for reassurance to say that for the May meeting, the Monday 5 signals is in the forward work programme for presenting the report to the board of the commissioners at that meeting.
Yes.
And obviously we've got the programme for this committee as well.
Yeah.
Standard reports, and revenue and capital outturn, which Lisa.
Okay. Lovely, thank you very much. That's noted. So last point, point 5, urgent items. I don't have any. So there aren't, if I haven't got it, there aren't any. Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn pawb. Thank you very much, everyone. I declare the meeting closed.